Well, hi everyone. These really are unusual times we're living in. Two men in their 80s still perform the same songs in different cities. Their contracts say they can't play within 30 days of each other. One earns about $2 million a night, while the other makes around $75,000. They once created some of the best rock music ever recorded, but they haven't spoken to each other since 1972. John Fogerty and Stu Cook were once best friends. Then came the lawsuit, the bad blood, and an album so terrible it destroyed their band forever. Something that happened backstage in Denver changed everything, and neither man ever forgave the other. This is the story of how success tore apart a musical family. John Fogerty was born on May 28, 1945, in Berkeley, California. He was the third of 5 boys, all packed into a small, unstable home. His father, Galen, worked long hours as a linotype operator, barely making $75 a week. His mother, Edith, was a second-grade teacher who earned even less. But money wasn't their biggest problem, it was alcohol. There was always a bottle of Four Roses hidden somewhere in the kitchen. Fights were common. When John was about 8 or 9 years old, his parents split up after another ugly night of drinking. His father moved into a dingy apartment in Oakland, and John would visit awkwardly on weekends. Those visits were filled with silence and confusion. Once, his father passed out drunk during John's Little League game, missing the only home run John ever hit. That moment stayed with him for years and would later inspire his anger in the song Fortunate Son. School didn't make things easier. John went to a strict Catholic school run by nuns who treated students harshly. Talking in class could mean kneeling on the hard floor for an hour. The worst part was the bathroom rule, only 2 short breaks a day. John had a nervous bladder and often wet himself. The other kids laughed, and sometimes he had to sit through class in soaked pants until the final bell. One nun even made him wear a dunce cap after an accident during a spelling test. His weight dropped by 12 pounds in 1 year. His mother never confronted the school about it. Later in life, that bottled-up humiliation came out in the way he led his band: strict schedules, no breaks, long rehearsals that could last 6 hours. Things began to shift when he went to Harding Grammar and then El Cerrito High School. There he met Doug Clifford in English class and Stu Cook in shop class. The three of them began taking guitar lessons from a local folk musician named Barry Olivier. Lessons were $3 each and held above a hardware store. Barry was honest, sometimes too honest. He told John he had no rhythm and no natural talent, and even charged him double. But John kept coming back week after week. During the summers, John's family went to Puda Creek near Winters, California. The water was dirty, but he didn't care. He loved wading in it for hours. Once, he caught a 14-inch catfish and kept it alive in a bucket until it slowly died. That image haunted him and later inspired the sadness in his song Green River. By 1960, El Cerrito was a small town with about 25,000 people. John became obsessed with rock and roll. Every week, he spent his $1.50 allowance buying 45 revolutions per minute records at Music City. The first one he ever bought was Long Tall Sally. After months of begging, his mom bought him a Silvertone guitar and a tiny amp on an installment plan, $10 a month. His father called it a waste of money and refused to help, but John didn't care. He practiced for 4 to 6 hours a day in the cold garage until his fingers bled. Neighbors called the police 17 times in 1 year because of the noise. Once, his mother got so frustrated that she smashed his amp, then cried and paid to have it repaired. His older brother Tom was already playing at local dances and eventually let John join his band, the Blue Velvets. During one Memorial Day event, Tom made fun of John's stage presence over the microphone. Embarrassed, John ran off the stage and locked himself in the bathroom for nearly an hour. That fear of performing stayed with him for years and turned into quiet resentment toward his brother. In 1962, Tom pawned John's guitar for $25 to buy marijuana and never gave it back. That betrayal left a deep scar. Around the same time, John's dad moved into a filthy apartment full of roaches. When John visited, he sometimes found him passed out, once in his own vomit. His mother remarried a man named Frank, a strict supervisor who banned music after 6 p.m. So John locked himself in his room and played quietly for hours, sometimes forgetting to eat or even noticing when he wet himself. One night during one of these long sessions, he wrote the first version of Porterville. At 16, John tried to run away to San Francisco with $37 he had saved. His mom found him at the bus station and slapped him in front of everyone. Still, his passion for music kept him going. By 1959, he formed a band with Stu and Doug. They kept the Blue Velvet's name and practiced in garages, using cheap instruments and broken amps. They played with heart, rehearsing 5 nights a week. Their first big break came at a school talent show, though John's voice cracked during Summertime Blues. Their cover of Rumble, however, got the crowd cheering. A parent in the audience worked at a local radio station, and soon a DJ named Casey Kasem played their song Bonita on air. It was a small victory, only 471 copies sold, but it gave them hope. John began writing his own songs after that. When Tom officially joined the group, things shifted again. Tom wanted to sing lead, but John refused. He said from then on, all original songs would have his voice only. That decision created tension that never really went away. Between 1961 and 1964, they released 3 singles, none were hits. Once, during a backyard gig, John's amp blew out and he smashed it in frustration in front of everyone. People began to see his temper. In 1964, they signed a record deal with Fantasy Records. They didn't have a lawyer, and the deal gave away nearly everything: royalties, control, and ownership of their recordings, for only $900 a year each. To make it worse, the label changed their name to the Gollywogs without asking them, using a word with racist origins. When they played in black clubs, they were booed before they even started. John hated it, but there was nothing he could do. He became a perfectionist. He controlled rehearsals down to the minute and wouldn't let anyone make decisions without his approval. He once made Doug repeat a single drum fill 87 times. Tom grew bitter, and Stu and Doug started thinking about quitting. By 1966, both John and Doug were drafted. John joined the Army Reserve and worked in a public information office, spending his free time writing songs, about 40 of them. When he came home, he took full control of the band. He played multiple instruments, wrote the lyrics, arranged everything, and decided what went on each record. In 1968, they released Porterville again under the Fantasy label. It didn't chart nationally but got attention in California. The band changed their name to something John came up with, Creedence Clearwater Revival. Creedence came from a friend of Tom's, Clearwater from a beer commercial, and Revival because they wanted a fresh start. Unfortunately, they signed another terrible contract, 5 more years on even worse terms. That one signature would cost John millions and spark decades of legal battles. Their first album came out in July 1968. The budget was small, and it only reached number 52 on the charts, but one song stood out, Susie Q. John turned a short rock tune into an 8-minute jam that felt raw and hypnotic. He recorded his vocals in one take at 2 in the morning. That song reached number 11 and gave CCR their first gold record. By 1969, they were touring non-stop, over 300 shows that year. They traveled in a beat-up van, slept in $6 motels, and played small halls all over the country. John kept shows short, just 22 minutes, no encores. He believed the magic faded if you played too long. The others didn't always agree, but John was in charge. They released Bayou Country in January 1969. It went triple platinum in 6 months. Proud Mary was written during a rainstorm while John sat at a piano in his small home. He'd never been to the Mississippi River, but his imagination and love of Mark Twain helped him create the song. It became an anthem and sold over 1 million copies. That same year, CCR released 3 full albums, Bayou Country, Green River, and Willie and the Poor Boys. Every single one was a hit. Fortunate Son, written in just 20 minutes, expressed John's anger at the class divide during the Vietnam War. Bad Moon Rising hit number 2 in the US and number 1 in the UK. The band was unstoppable, but behind the scenes, they were falling apart. Tom felt ignored and humiliated as his guitar was mixed lower on songs. Stu and Doug were frustrated that John made all the creative choices. Still, they couldn't argue. CCR had become one of the biggest bands in the world. By 1970, they had 5 top 10 singles, sold out major venues, and played Woodstock. But exhaustion and bitterness were setting in. John was burned out and angry at their label, which made millions while the band earned very little. Cosmos Factory, released in July 1970, sold 4 million copies and stayed at number 1 for 9 weeks. But inside the studio, things were worse than ever. Tom asked to sing a section of one song, and John refused. Tom left the studio and didn't return for 3 days. By October 1970, Tom quit the band. Pendulum was released that December, and although it sounded different, more experimental, it marked the beginning of the end. John recorded most parts himself, and the others felt like session players. By 1971, the band had sold over 10 million records, yet each member made only about $100,000 a year. Fantasy Records made $25 million. John brought in lawyers, but Stu and Doug didn't back him, afraid of legal costs. John felt betrayed again and decided to end the band. Their final tour in 1971 was brutal, over 100 shows in 8 months. Tom got sick from the stress and lost more than 20 pounds. John wrote Sweet Hitchhiker during that time. It reached number 6, their last top 10 hit. Their final show was in Honolulu, where Tom was seen crying backstage. Then came 1972. John told Stu and Doug that if they wanted to keep going, they would each have to write and sing a third of the next album. They thought he was trying to sabotage them, and they were probably right. The album, Mardi Gras, was a disaster. John didn't sing or play on most songs and refused to fix the mix. Critics tore it apart. Rolling Stone called it Fogerty's Revenge and the worst album ever made by a major rock band. It reached number 12 but sold poorly. Their final concert was in Denver on May 22, 1972. During the encore, fans shouted for the old hits. Fogerty threw down his guitar and walked off stage. A few months later, CCR officially disbanded. Stu and Doug found out through a press release. For 10 years after that, John refused to play any CCR songs live. He was bitter and angry, especially toward Fantasy Records. Not even Proud Mary or Bad Moon Rising. Bob Dylan eventually convinced him to start playing them again, saying, "If you don't, people will think Tina Turner wrote Proud Mary." Meanwhile, Fantasy Records kept making money off CCR's old music. The band members earned almost nothing. Their contract was one of the worst ever signed by a major American band. John released solo music, sometimes under fake names, and even played all instruments himself. His talent was still there, but lawsuits and stress haunted him. In 1984, Fantasy even sued him for copying himself, claiming his new song The Old Man Down the Road was too similar to Run Through the Jungle. He had to bring his guitar to court and prove the songs were different. He won, but the legal fees nearly ruined him. In 1990, tragedy struck. Tom Fogerty died of AIDS-related complications after a bad blood transfusion. John hadn't spoken to him in 20 years. Tom had sent letters, cards, and gifts, all returned unopened. John arrived at the hospital hours too late. He later said, "Zance didn't just steal my music, he stole my brother." John paid Tom's medical bills quietly but carried the guilt for the rest of his life. In 2025, both John Fogerty and Stu Cook are in their 80s. They still tour, performing the same songs that made them famous. Fogerty earns millions per show, Cook earns thousands. Their contracts forbid them from performing in the same city within 30 days. Sometimes, Stu Cook attends John's concerts, sitting quietly in the back, waiting for a nod or even a glance that never comes. Two old men, forever tied by the music they created, and the silence that will never end between them.